So guys, this is very interesting. I cleaned one of my skimmers a couple of days ago, not yesterday but the day before, and it was a deep clean of my skimmer. I'll show you I'll show you guys that later. And I rinsed it in this bucket. First it was murky, of course, but of course now it's clean because everything's settled. I mean, it looks clearer because everything's settled. But what I noticed is that some of the muck or flock or whatever it is floated to the top, but some remains at the bottom. And I've had this experience before, especially sometimes in the middle of summer, where a lot of it will float to the top, especially after a sunny weather. It was just sunny here not too long ago. Now it's in the shade again. But I think maybe earlier when it was sunny, most of them were floating on the top. But now maybe some sank at the bottom. So I don't know. But some are still on the top. In the summer, when there's more algae, especially the green ones, this brown muck here tends to be more green in color, if my recollections are correct. But I didn't think these would contain that much algae because my pond is mostly covered, and I don't have much algae, at least from what I can tell visually. So it'll be interesting, and this is what I'll do, is that take some of the floating samples here. It's kind of spongy in texture, and put it under the microscope. It looks like if you disturb it a little bit, it'll come sinking down. And my suspicion is that because of the flock, they contain some algae, and when it's sunny, the algae produces oxygen, and some of that oxygen gets caught up in the flock and makes them float to the top of the water. So if my suspicion is that the flocks that are currently floating might contain more algae than the ones sank at the bottom. So we'll see what we can see in the microscope comparing these two flocks, the ones at the bottom and the ones that are floating at top. So what I have here is one of those turkey baster syringe. I'll grab a sample of the floating muck here, and the floating ones I suspect would contain more algae than the ones at the bottom. Perhaps we can see more oxygen bubbles under the microscope. So we'll take a little sample here. And so we'll go ahead and look at this under the microscope. So this is my microscope here, It's a Nikon microscope. I got it from somebody that refurbishes microscope from labs and high schools and stuff. So we'll have a look at the slide. So this is what you can see under the microscope at 400 magnification. You see there's a nematode there. It's a very microscopic worm. And some ciliates, those are the small ones that are crawling, which I can't seem to focus on at the present. There's one there. They're just crawling ciliates. The brown parts are just bacteria in a biofilm or a flock. And the greenish ones that are circular there are single cell algae that are stuck in the biofilm. There's a nice green one there. It's pretty big. And relative to other times of the year, I see more green than brown, so that means there's more algae. Always interesting to see these ciliates. They have different sizes. Some people think that these ciliates could be koi parasites. Maybe, maybe not, but they don't look like the types we normally know that are to be parasites in a koi. That big crawling ciliate there, or protozoa, I know what that is. It's called the Aspidisca. Some wastewater treatment says that if you find a lot of these, you usually have a clear effluent. That means you have a clear water in a wastewater filter. Lost it. These filaments you see here, I believe is either Filamentous bacteria or Filamentous Cyanobacteria, but they're not, I don't think they're Filamentous algae, because Filamentous algae would be much bigger, and that thing that you see moving in the middle there, it's shaped like a boat. It's turning around. It's a diatom. I think there's another one here. There's some more algae there in the middle. It's green. Another aspidisca. So I would suspect this is the skimmer where I pour or trickle in chlorinated water. I would suspect it was less like moving alive things or life in this filter, because some of these are very sensitive to chlorine from what I've read. But as you can see, chlorine hasn't killed these microflora that's moving around. Or maybe the ones that are, or the ones that survived are more resistant species. I think this is another diatom. There's a nice one. And I don't see much rotifers. Other times I see a lot of them. Other times I don't. I don't know what the pattern is. But like I said, this is the filter where I trickle in chlorine. So maybe the rotifers are more sensitive to chlorine or chloramine. When chlorine combines with ammonia, it forms chloramine. I don't know. Oh, there's another rotifer. I mean, no, that's not a rotifer, it's a nematode. Another aspidisca. Here's a good example of string algae. Again, there's not many these days. They're not very long. Much bigger than the other filaments that you saw earlier. Wonder what that is. So now we'll get a sample of the muck that's at the bottom, or happened to sink down at the bottom. And we'll put this under the microscope. So if you want to examine muck under a microscope, this is a good way to do it. Just put a little sample there. And muck, what you call muck, is not flat. It's like a globe or shaped like a planet. It's three-dimensional. So what you'll have to do in order to see anything meaningful is with a cover slip like that, press as much as you can to get it flat. So I'll press it. A firm pressure will make it flat. And sometimes if there's too much water, you can wick the edge of the cover slip here with the tissue paper to get some of the water out. Then you'll be able to see more meaningful things. Make it more two-dimensional. So this is the sample taken from the bottom, the muck that were sank. And in terms of the amount of algae, I don't see a difference. In fact, perhaps there's more algae here that are obvious anyways. So it could be that all that muck were just sank because all the oxygen was dissipated. Like I said, like when these algae produces oxygen, sometimes it gets caught in the flock there and makes them float to the surface. See what's moving there? Hard to see. Some more ciliates. Again, for me, this is a healthy flock. It helps filter the water. And I think what you can tell is that healthy flock looks like you can see light going through them and you see a lot of ciliates. And if you were to see like more undigested feces, for example, from fish, it wouldn't look anything like this. You'll have dark specks or big specks that are not transparent. And you wouldn't see algae or diatoms. There's a nice picture there of a diatom. Or in an unhealthy flock. For example, I went to his pond where he just treated the pond with oxalic acid and potassium permanganate, and his flock particles look like apocalyptic. There is nothing moving on that flock. So really, it's not good for filtering water or filtering pollution in the water. Again, it's a cycle of fish being sick, then adding chemicals, then killing the filters, and then making the fish sick, etc., etc. You can just imagine though, like, if koi were to shed any parasite off their skin, it'll go through the filters. It would end up in a flock like this, whether they're the eggs or the parasite itself. I don't think there's a way for them to survive in this environment. Because some of these protozoans, they would act as predators to the koi parasites. They wouldn't survive in a filter like this. That thing is a bacteria eating machine. And I think some of them can eat, they'll eat ciliates too. So here's some filaments. These are bacterial filaments. See, they're very fine. And what they do is they keep the flock together in a ball. So, or they act as a template for other bacteria to grow on. So now, I've been wanting to do this for a long time now, is compare muck that's coming from this skimmer here, like I said, that receives chlorinated water as a trickle, and muck from this skimmer. That should be more livelier than the one that's causing. That's the one that's getting chlorine. So what I'll do is that I'm gonna suck up some muck here with the syringe, and then let it settle out, and then put it under a microscope. Hopefully this would work. I've never done this before. I might have to put the camera down because I'm gonna have to do this two-handed for more suction when I suck the muck off the surface here. There you go. I got a little bit of muck from that surface, and I'll let that settle in a container and then put it under a microscope and see what we get. There you go, it's settled, and I'll suck that up and put it under a slide and look under the microscope. So this is interesting. This is from The skimmer B, that's what I call skimmer B, the one that doesn't receive chlorinated water. And I don't know what this is. I've never seen that before. If anyone knows, I would really appreciate it. They look like some sort of eggs. Eggs of what? I don't know. And already you see something really big here. This is at 100 magnification. And whatever this is, it's trapped within the muck or flock particle. I suspect this is a bristleworm, though I don't see much bristles. If you look closer, maybe you can. It's huge. Again, these bigger microbes are very good at filtering water. See, what happens is that they eat algae, and they also eat bacteria. And of course, bacteria eats the dissolved organics and nitrogen out of the water. And it's a good cycle. The carbon from the dissolved organics get eaten by bacteria, and the bacteria get eaten by the bigger animals such as these and protozoans. And of course, these bigger animals breathe, and what they breathe is CO2. So the carbon makes it up back into the atmosphere. It comes from the food and into the bacteria and into these bigger animals. And when the bigger animals breathe, they complete the cycle by breathing out CO2. You can tell the flock in skimmer B is very different than the two other flocks I've shown you earlier from skimmer A. First of all, the other two flocks or muck that I've shown you are 2 days old, just sitting there in the sun. So it wasn't fresh. And this one has, I forgot what these are called. They're nuclei or something like that. I have to look it up, what it's called. But it's a baby of something. Somebody will comment, I'm sure, or hopefully. And you can tell the flock here has got a lot of filamentous bacteria. You see them here. There are certain water conditions that promotes these. I don't know if it's more oxygen or less oxygen, I don't know. And I believe this is, we're still at the 100 magnification. And you can tell it's more brown. I don't see too many algae. on here, and it's darker. Maybe because it's got more undigested food or poop. But in my opinion, this is still quite healthy. So you can just imagine if flukes, for example, or their eggs end up in a filter, there'll be so many predators that the chances of them surviving in a filter like this is probably very little. And some of these can be really nasty predators. And they are not fish parasites. Let's see if I can switch to 100 times here. You can tell already this filter is very lively. There is lots of moving tiny little animals. And I challenge you guys to see. I bet no one will find any parasites like Trichodina in an environment like this. There's so many things can go wrong when a parasite ends up in a filter like this. Some may think the little things that are moving there are Kostya. I don't know for sure if they are Kostya. But there are so many organisms, different types. We probably just know like 1% of them. And they all look like Kostya. Like the one in the center there could look like Kostya. The tiniest little dot could be Kostya. But if it is, there's so much varieties here that Kostya, there's so many things that can go wrong with Kostya living in an environment full of other microorganisms. And really Kostya, you get infected with them apparently if your koi are stressed and immune compromised. And such is true with other diseases, fish diseases, or diseases in general anyways. So if you keep your koi unstressed, living with a good filter is one of them, and they should be all right. I think these are Filamentous Cyanobacteria, or blue-green algae. You can see that there is little bumps on the strings. Maybe or maybe not. Sometimes if you see bumps on the strings, they could be heterocysts. That means these are specialized cells that actually take nitrogen. They can take nitrogen and use them to make energy. These are, I think for sure, these are blue-green algae. There's so many things moving in here. Here's some filamentous algae. You can tell they're bigger. I don't know what that is. Pretty interesting. Can't focus on it. Maybe I'll zoom out. First time I've seen that before. I'd love to know what that is. Here's something interesting, it's purple. I think it's purple. And it's pretty long. Here's a nice clip of a bristleworm. And this is at 100 magnification. Let's see what the insides look like. Go by going by higher magnification. Sorry, that was a 40. Lost it. Oh, there you go. This one looks like it's been eating algae or something. That's one thing about having a live filter. Live meaning there's lots of creatures in it. Some of these creatures eat algae, such as rotifers. Some of them you can really see that they've been eating algae because they have green things inside them. My lenses are pretty dirty. I think that's the mouth. Or is it the other end? I don't know. You can even see their guts moving. It's kind of cool. This peristaltic movement in their gut. So that could be the mouth. We'll see the poop end. I think that's poop. They call them bristleworms because they have these bristles on their body. So some might say that there is bad bacteria in muck. I think they're not wrong. There's definitely bad bacteria in muck, and some of these mucks have aromonas. For sure they have aromonas, and they have pseudomonas. But if they are living in a healthy environment, those bacteria, they don't bother anybody. What bothers them, if there's a change in environment, they make defense chemicals, and that's when they become pathogenic. Just like when they're stressed, as if they are on the defense, they make defense chemicals. And what makes them defensive, if there are chemicals that are put in the pond, and then they put out defense chemicals, or there's some chemicals that break up their home, which is these flocks, and they end up free floating in the water column, and they are very defensive and pathogenic. But in their home, just like in these flocks or muck, they usually pretty happy and are non-pathogenic. So if they are in a stable environment, your filter bacteria should be very happy. And when you take these out, when you're cleaning them, make sure you surprise them and take them straight out of the pond, because if they end up unhappy in the water column, they could be pathogenic and are on their defense mode, creating defense toxins. So next we're gonna get muck from skimmer A here, that gets trickled water, trickled chlorinated water, and see what the muck looks like. Again, I'm gonna turn off the camera because I need two hands to get enough pressure here so I can suck up the muck. So this is from skimmer A, and it's quite surprising. There's still a lot of movement in there. I was thinking because the chlorine, there'll be less because a lot of them will be killed off. That's a rotifer right there. Sometimes you can see its mouth open and they'll have those whirling rings on them. It's another oh, what is that? I used to know what it is, but it's almost like a mosquito larvae or something. It's going really fast. I was having a fit. Maybe it is a mosquito larvae. It's pretty lively. It's crazy. It's too fast. Maybe we'll zoom out. This is at 40 times. There's there's a nice clip of rotifer there with its mouth open. That's at 100 times. So we'll go to 400 times. Hopefully don't lose it like now. There it is. That's a nice clip of a rotifer. See, having something moving in a filter like this, you can be assured that you're getting enough oxygen in your water, because some of these organisms, they can't stand low oxygen. And in fact, if you leave them in the slide long enough, they'll run out of oxygen and eventually die. So you'd almost, oh, it's ate something. Did you see that? That's cool. I don't know what it ate. It happened so quickly. Sometimes you see them full of green in their belly. That means they've been eating algae. And I saw something dead here. I think it, whatever it is, it died because of low oxygen already. So maybe time to get rid of this slide. So in a wastewater treatment plant, they count the numbers of these animals they have. They count the number of rotifers, nematodes, crawling ciliates, swimming ciliates, vorticelles, to see the quality of their water. So some say if they see a lot of like a certain species, like the the Aspidisca, they have very good clarity in their water. And sometimes if they felt that they've had a toxin flow into their water plant, like an industry dumping chemicals in the sewer system, they assess how toxic it is by looking at their filter, their sludge or flock or whatever you call it. In the pond hobby, we call it muck. They can tell how old the filter flocks are by looking for these bigger animals, because these bigger, they call them metazoans, they exist in older, more mature filter flocks. And sometimes when they see too many of them, they want to waste some of their, they call it activated sludge, out of their system to make room for more. And this is a healthy flock. This one's not looking too healthy, it's dead, but that's a healthy flock. Sometimes if you see like dark areas there, it's more of a sign that it's compacted. Not much oxygen is getting through. Not much water is going through there, or more like not much oxygen. And when you see a thicker sludge, that it's dark, that means it's turned anaerobic. It's good in a way to have some of that, because when you see those darker muck, as long as they don't contain poop or undigested material, they turn anaerobic. That means they can actually denitrify in those sludge without much oxygen going through. The nitrates in the pond water gets converted to nitrogen gas. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this rather long video on what is a healthy muck. Anyways, on behalf of my hungry rotifer here and myself, I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.